Hey guys, welcome to the J-Chip Show. My name is J-Chip, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Miasma from Gyro Media.
Hi, everybody. My name is Miasma. I am one of the Segoy Boys on our weekly podcast with my good friend here, J-Chip, and the Art of Anime. And I have my own channel myself called Gyre Media, Gyre Media. And I cover anime, manga, video games, and a whole mismatch of stuff. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, check me out. But if not, keep watching J-Chip, and maybe you could watch us both. How about do that?
Yeah, make sure you come over every Sunday for the Segoy Boys podcast, because that's a lot of fun.
It's a fun time with fun
But
individuals.
but for right now, we're going to talk about an anime called Scryed. You probably never heard of it, but probably because it came out in the '90s, and sadly, it hasn't had the publicity as it does like shows like Star and Cowboy Bebop. Sadly, Scryed did kind of fade into obscurity, but hopefully, this review will bring it back into the mainstream.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope Skryed or Skydidal can have a little cult following with people finally talking about it on the internet because it's
Yeah.
not as bad a show I think as people may remember.
No, it's not a bad show at all. But we're going to talk about Miasma getting into the show because he introduced me to the show. So, Miasma, what was your first memory of Scryed?
Sure. I first saw Skryed probably mid 2000s, and it was on Adult Swim, part of their block. And Adult Swim was really my first avenue of watching any anime. And a lot of my favorite shows, being Inuyasha and FMA, came from the Adult Swim block. And this was like near like that time sort of when I was first getting into anime, and I don't know, it was just a cool show, aesthetically pleasing, has a myriad of colors in the screen, lots of action, lots of yelling, pretty much everything like a 15-year-old kid wants to see or around
Absolutely.
that age. So it appealed to me then, and to be honest, it still appeals to me now. So it's a cool show.
Yeah. So, the story of Scryed, in case everybody is wondering, a strange environmental phenomenon 22 years ago in the Kanzawa prefecture caused the land to split and protrude upward, reaching up against unprecedented heights, created the schedule area known as the Lost Ground. Cosma is a young mercenary who lives in the Lost Ground, looking for any work he can find to sustain his livelihood within the harsh environment. So, Miasma, what do you honestly think of the story so far? Like within the first episode, what was your mind going into, like that first episode?
So like in the first episode, I remember thinking that it's like such a like a cataclysmic event that created the lost ground. Seemed like when you're a teenage kid and you think about something that is like potentially going to give someone some kind of cool superpower. That seems
Yeah,
like an almost like possible thing. I mean, in a show which the show later becomes full of impossibilities, but it was cool to see that like it was a thing of nature that happened initially. At least that's what you believe it to be, and I thought that that was cool. And just it plants the seed of the idea of different classes of people, which is pretty
yeah.
prevalent in this show.
In my opinion, I think like the first episode was really strong. Even though we gotta bring the elephant in the room, the dub is kind of cheesy.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think that it's not a bad dub. I think they got good actors. I think the script is bad.
I think over time the dub got better.
Mm.
I just think that first initial like episode with the dub was a bit cheesy, but it was still fine. And I mean, it's not like Higurashi no Nakakura needs dub.
Oh god.
It's at least a balance better than that, but
Yeah.
it's no like masterpiece.
The main basically the main girl character Nimori is her voice actress. I don't remember who it is, but she would just felt very lazy, I would say. And because she's like
Yeah,
supposed to be a core character here, it's hard to get behind her. And she has a lot of what's supposed to be like emotional lines, and she's very
yeah,
like deadpan. So, and then you You have like Stephen Bloom is in this, Crispin Freeman's in this, so you have like good actors. It's just they're given this kind of shitty script with a bunch of crazy one-liners.
Yeah,
and it stands out in the
but I
wrong
mean,
way.
but I mean that was back then. You know, that was kind of the norm back then for
Yeah.
anime.
There's way worse
But-
dubs, so I
Definitely.
just remember that.
But speaking of characters, what do you think of the main cast? We got 4 main characters: Kazuma, Mimori, Ryuho, and Kanami.
So Nibori.
We're gonna start with Kazuma.
Oh, Kazuma. Okay, so Kazuma, really friggin' cool dude. Like, just this ruffian from like the streets who doesn't have like anything to his name besides his friends and his like reputation as being a badass. Has a really cool voice. Has a really cool power. The shell bullet, which, by the way, the powers in this show are easily its best part, but I'm sure we'll get to them. But as a character, he's really cool. I like how he progresses throughout the story. Him as a person and him as an alter user. Yeah, I like Kazuma a lot. He's a little hard-headed, but he's an anime protagonist, so that's
I didn't think he was a bad character. I like his design, not just the ultra design, but his actual design.
Yeah.
I think he doesn't look like an anime protagonist. He looks like something from a side character, but I appreciate that kind of.
Yeah,
because
it gives it a down-to-earth feel.
Yeah, but I don't think like he was the sole main character. Kind of like in Death Note, how you could say L or Light was the main character of the show.
Mm.
But of course, like everything revolves around Kazuma, and he is the sole main character. But you can take a look at Ryoho, and you could say he's the main character as well.
Yeah, and Ryuho is, I would say he's almost equally interesting. I tended to not like him early on in the series, but I liked him toward the latter half. He also has a very interesting power, and he has an interesting background, which you learn about. You learn about why he's doing the actions that he's doing, why he's kind of a jerk. So yeah, I liked he got good background, he got good character development, he has an interesting power, and he has an okay character design. So, with all those criteria, I think he's an all right guy.
Yeah,
not as
I mean,
cool as
he
Kazuma,
doesn't
though.
What was cool about Ryoho is that he didn't like stay the same throughout the entire show. Like there was a genuine like build within his character towards the end.
Right, for sure.
And I always appreciate that. And you know, the thing about Ryoho is that I really like his power, but
yeah. Do you want to get into like the ultra powers in general, or do you want to, or should we go? With Nibori?
Yeah, we're gonna get into the powers very soon.
Okay.
But we can talk about Mimori next if you want to.
Okay, Nibori, I would say, is, in my opinion, like the worst part of the show in terms of characters. So I guess I would say the worst character in my opinion, just because she's mostly it might be because of the voice, but I also feel like a lot of the events of the show could have still happened without her, and she's just kind of there. Along the lines of a show called Zonkyo no Terror, or Terror in Residence, they sort of include this character that is supposed to have this like sense of catharsis, and like you feel with them what they're going through, but I never got that with Nimori. Like she supposedly falls in love very quickly at a very young age and holds on to it forever, and develops bonds very quickly with people, with like everyone around her, and is kind of stuck on the sideline a lot. And I'm not big on like sideline characters. I wish she took some more action.
You know, like it's interesting that she is named as a main character, but throughout the entire show, she felt more like a side character.
Yeah, come the latter half, she's like an afterthought.
The supporting character, Cyrus, I felt like she was more of a main character than her.
Oh, for sure. Charisse, yeah, she has the coolest. She has like one of my favorite powers, and honestly, she, in terms of like the love triangle part of the show that they have, she has the most, I would say, intriguing, like angle of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like if the show was maybe from her perspective, it might have been a little cooler on the
It
romance
would have
side.
been. And then we got the next main character, which is Kanami, I guess lolly of the group. But
Yeah.
one of the good things about Scryed is that it wasn't overly sexualized for like a lot of the female characters, I feel.
Right. Yeah, and there's a decent amount of female characters, and there's
Yeah.
not a ton of fan service. This show is one that does the fan service with its action and with its
Yeah.
the cool powers and stuff like that. But Kanami, first character design, she's got that like anime 50 feet long hair going on, even though she's
Yeah.
like 7. But yeah, she's just this cool little girl who's friends with Kazuma, and they're both from the streets, like the lost ground, as it were,
Yeah.
and grew up basically with nothing. Lived day by day, and the show gives a good feeling of like how their daily life kind of sucks, and like I said, that feeds
Yeah.
into like the contrast of the haves and the have-nots, and unfortunately her and Kazuma are in the have-nots part, and I liked her, and she gets really cool development later on in the show.
So, what did you personally think of the relationship between Kazuma and Kanami?
Initially, I thought it was cool. It was kind of like they were from the same area, like I said, and then they also have a friend named Kirishima who they interact with from the Lost Ground. Just this kind of like she doesn't know a lot about the like thuggish things that Kazuma gets into, like the trouble he gets into, and she's kind of this like I don't know, like maternal character. Like she takes care of people and stuff like that. Later on in the show, it gets a little weird, especially the very end with like some confessions that like she makes to herself. But I mean, not everybody might feel the same way about that. But I thought it was kind of odd. But yeah, I still liked her as a character. And
Yeah,
I like the relationship.
She was a good character.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like it was more like a father and daughter type relationship.
Yeah.
Like Kanami like really brought the best in Kazuma in terms of acting like an adult.
Yeah.
Because he can be a little bit immature sometimes.
Yeah. Or even like it's weird to say this about an anime, but brother sister.
Yeah.
Brother sister, but not in the like Oriimo way. Because she, what I do like is her nickname. She calls Kazuma Kazakun.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cute and funny, and it irritates him. It's a recurring joke. And I like that aspect of it, how he likes to taking care of this girl and living with this girl, even though she pesters him a little bit by calling him Kazakun.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then it comes like later parts of the show. It changes. I mean, it changes slightly, but not enough to like make it like discouraging.
Yeah. So before we get to the powers, I think we can't talk about Scryed without not talking about Stray Kruger.
Stray, I'm so glad you brought up Stray Kruger.
That whenever that guy was on the screen, I was always happy. He was my favorite character in the entire show.
Stray Kruger is Bamf, the anime character. Like he is so cool, and it's Crispin Freeman at his finest, and he's just this cool dude. He's got a really cool power, and the most interesting aspect of him is that he is sort of a fence sitter on a lot of things, or he's sort of like in his own realm. Like you never really know what he's on his own side. Like there's two clear sides to the story, and he's sort of on both.
Yeah, he's sort of the anti-hero of the entire show.
Yeah.
Which is great because like I love characters that like stick to their own side.
Yeah.
Like sure, yes, he's technically a member of Holy, but is he really?
Right. Yeah, it makes you question that a lot, which adds depth to him. He's really cool.
Yeah. So now that we got the characters out of the way, let's talk about the powers and the abilities of Alter. So, Miasma, if someone were to say, what the fuck is Alter, what would you say to them?
So, in Scryed, during this event that happened that created the Lost Ground, the Uprising or Great Uprising or whatever the hell they called it. A certain percentage of the population was basically given. I'm going to refer to it as X-Men powers because that's honestly what it's a lot like. People gain these like specific mutations, and it's sort of like a blend between if you want to, so X-Men from like Western media, and then Full Metal Alchemist from Japan, from anime, because to create or activate their power, it's different with each individual, but they all have to break down matter. So they usually crush like rocks and stuff will turn into dust and then create like, they could create anything from a like living being that they can manipulate to like a giant robot kind of guy with a hammer arm to they could make like clones, extra like limbs, or they could turn stuff into water and so forth. There's a lot of, and then there's even crazier powers like but the show that's the coolest part I think of Skryed, is it's very inventive with its powers. Like I've never seen a show that, and they don't go into a lot of detail about everything. It's not like Hunter x Hunter where like they're going to explain like how the Nen or something works with this and that. It's just kind of the powers given to you and you're kind of just told to believe that this guy can do this, which I was all right with.
I feel like sometimes like it's okay to not explain everything. Like it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
Especially for a show like this, like this is just a action show from the 2000s. Like it's not really meant to take seriously. Yeah, it's a really good act. Like you can turn your brain off and enjoy the fighting because the fighting is really good in the show.
Yeah. Oh, the action sequences, very very cool. And there's multiple big fights. You'll see very often the same characters fighting multiple times in epic fashion. Lots of like background destruction, a la like old school DBZ and stuff. But just like really cool powers all around.
And I gotta say, like visually, I think Skryed still holds up to this day.
Awesome, yeah, very very cool. Especially for its time. Like I my favorite is the color effect when people activate their alter power. Is this like rainbowy kind of like wave around them or around whatever they're doing, and then they can create whatever they're making. And also, while having an altar might sound cool in this world, it basically makes you to make a decision as to, are you going to side with the government, or are you going to basically live your life like as a delinquent, which I kind of found interesting.
Yeah. The music in the show is also really good.
Oh, the OP, Reckless Fire. If you don't watch the show, you have to watch Reckless Fire, the OP for Skryed, because it's really, really cool. Probably one of my favorite OPs.
And the ending song is really good, too.
Yeah. And visually really cool looking as well.
Yeah. So, what did you think about the ending to Skryed? The last few episodes leading up to the ending.
The last few episodes leading up to this. So, this show has, and I'll try not to super spoil stuff, even though we know how much I actually care about spoilers if you're a Segoy Boys fan. It does an interesting thing where it builds up to this fight, like a fight that you want to see. It'll introduce a baddie, and then you gotta go fight that bad guy, and he does a whole bunch of bad stuff, and there's a whole lot of drama and tension. But that isn't even in the final episode, because there's another fight that you actually want to happen that is actually where the show proceeds to, it goes to show you that, which I found really, really interesting, because it was what I wanted to see. Like, I actually didn't really care about that first fight as much as the second fight that happens. And then I liked how it actually ended. I liked its conclusion in the end.
If anybody is wondering, there are 2 movies, but you don't really need to watch them since they're just recaps. Yeah. You're perfectly fine with watching the show. But if you want to go check out the movies, go right ahead.
There is a manga as well that I believe started publication like as the show was finishing, if I remember correctly, and it differs somewhat in the story. So even if you've seen the anime Skryed, maybe you could check out the manga because I've heard
Yeah.
that it is slightly different in some ways.
Yeah. So overall, what do you think of Scryed? The entire show. When rewatching it recently, what did you think of it?
Well, I think would like it more years ago. If I back then I also hadn't seen as many shows. Back then I probably would have said, "Oh, it's one of my favorites." But now I look back on it and I say it's an above average show. Not like a classic or anything, but I think a good example of like what you had said. It's something you could turn your brain off and enjoy. And if anything we've mentioned is appealing to you, like the action, the lots of testosterone-filled yelling, but even like government intrigue, like people, like I said, the haves and the have-nots, or if you just want to see people punch each other and fight each other with giant robots, you could just watch that. This show has all of that and the most inventive powers I've ever seen in a show.
It even has some pretty decent comedy, I'd say, especially with Stray Kruger, because you're gonna like everybody I talk to that watch the show loves Stray Kruger.
Stray Kruger. Oh, can we mention Stray Kruger's power for a second? Because he's so cool. Stray Kruger has a power called the Radical Goodspeed, which allows him to increase the speed of both himself and objects. He can transform things into like like a normal car. He could transform into like this ridiculously fast car, and he can also do this to himself later on in the story. But Radical Goodspeed, and he is the ultimate. It is the perfect power like for him and for someone voiced by Crispin Freeman, because he's just this insane guy who lives his life 500 miles an hour. And it's just a really cool power. See, that's one of the most inventive in the show. And not everybody necessarily fights with brute force in this show. There are several alter users that have different abilities that are not so much giant robots, but they're mind control things, or like I said, clones, or the ideal trio of women who will obey your every command. So. Yeah, like I said, I'm somebody that loves powers. If you're also somebody that likes like cool powers, then you'll love this show.
Yeah. So the final verdict of the show, I think it's a really fun show. It's not perfect. It's not going to be a good character study, I don't think. But this is something that I think everybody can enjoy. Even if you're new into anime, you can enjoy it. Even if you've seen like hundreds and hundreds of shows, like you can still have a really good time with this.
For sure.
It's the one thing I love about this show is that it's not boring and it's always fun. Like you're always interested. I was very interested to see the different type of powers, and I was very satisfied. But if I had to say one negative, it's the villain that shows up at the end. I really didn't care about him.
Yeah, he wasn't very interesting. And I mean, you learn how he's like tied into the background of other characters in the story, but like I said, like the fight that everyone wants to see isn't what like they perceive as the ultimate climax in the show, which is odd. Because the big fight is Kazuma Ryuho, and while it gives you that a whole bunch of times, they do introduce that weird villain in there. But I would agree too and say this is a great bridge show if you're like, if you're really into like X-Men, as I mentioned, or like superhero kind of stuff, and you've never seen anime before, Scryed all day. Like great thing to start with, because it's very much like Western comics.
So as far as anime recommendations, if you've seen the show and you want to see something similar to this, honestly, I would say My Hero Academia. It's a bit longer, but it has the same general idea with every character having a different power, and it has really awesome fights. Also, Scryed was done by Sunrise, and if you know your anime history, Sunrise and Bones kind of have a history together.
Yeah. Goro Taniguchi is the director as well. Really cool dude. Another big thing that he did, Code Geass, something else I would also recommend in a similar vein.
Definitely.
But yeah, and like My Hero Aka I mentioned as well. Anything with really cool powers, just like Scryed has.
Is there anything off the top of your head that you would recommend if someone loves Scryed and wanted to see something else?
Well, if they've never seen Code Geass, I'd watch Code Geass. But then again, I would say that to everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe a Soul Eater, because it also has a lot of cool, interesting like abilities. That's more weapon based. But I like the idea of people. It's like with a school, so it's a structured form of people using their abilities to achieve goals. And this has like a government of people using said abilities to achieve their goals. But yeah, both great shows. If you've never seen Code Geass or Soul Eater, you should watch those because they're both good.
Another show I would honestly recommend is a show called Witchblade. It's a bit more fan servicey, but it's still got really awesome action, and the powers between the two characters are very similar, with like a gauntlet on your hand.
Nice.
Yeah. So, any final words you want to say before we wrap things up?
Everybody should check out the Sugoi Boys on Sundays at 9 o'clock Eastern, our live chat over on Gyre Media. And yeah, it was. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely.
Everybody should watch Scryed.
If you can, because I want to bring up a point that there's at the time of this recording, there's no way to watch Scryed legally unless you want to buy the DVD, which can be a bit pricey. But if you can find it and it's a really good price, I'd say pick it up.
Yeah, it was expensive.
Unless you decide to watch it by other means.
Which, you can do if you want. It's not our fault that they don't license stuff. So I don't feel bad about it. But I bought mine, and it was a lot of money. But I get people that don't want to do that, especially for a show they may be just trying out for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, thank you, Gyre Media, for coming to the J-Chip Show. If you want to come back, you're welcome anytime.
Awesome. I'll definitely do that.
Make sure you subscribe to the J-Chip Show as well. I want to thank my Patreons, Saxtra59, Warpbait, Stuff We Play, and Niachan. Thank you very much for supporting me on Patreon. But more importantly, go check out Gyre Media. He has a ton of really good videos. He makes a lot of anime videos that I personally agree with. And I wouldn't say that your channel is more negative. I think you generally bring in the positive on your side of the anime spectrum on YouTube.
Yeah, I believe in the big argument that anime should be fun. In fact, I have a video called that everybody should check out because it's one of my favorite videos that I've ever made.
Also, we might talk about that on the Sugoi Boy someday.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe it'll be this Sunday. Just maybe.
Maybe.
Or maybe we'll just talk about waifus and why Ryuho and Kazuma is a really good ship.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that.
Maybe. But see you guys later. I'll see you next time.
See you guys.